Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Road to 2000. As always, my name is Caleb Denby, and I will be your driver on this journey. Tonight, I want to start what's going to be a series about one of my favorite openings to play against with white. So, of course, I'm a d4 player with white. There are a lot of things you have to deal with as a d4 player. Probably the most fun is the King's Indian defense. So this is a pretty controversial opening. It's been played a ton at the top level, but these days, with the advent of super strong computers, people are starting to question whether or not this is a playable opening at the highest level of chess for black. It tends to be a very risky opening. Historically, players like Kasparov have done very, very well with it, and it makes for a very, very fun game, as we're going to see here tonight. So to start with, I want to go through some of the different lines that I'm planning to cover. I'll talk about all of these different options that black is going to have in the King's Indian against the way that I'm going to recommend to play. And hopefully by the end of the night, you guys have a really good feel, a really good understanding for what the plans are in these King's Indian positions and how we can make them turn out well for white, especially in the lines that I'm going over tonight. I'm going to be talking about an idea that hasn't really been popular at the top level since, I think, the 80s and 90s is when people sort of realized maybe this idea is not so good. That being said, I have played against this particular move numerous times in my chess career, so it's definitely still a mainstay. That being said, though, again, like I said, I want to start out with just kind of an overview of the opening, talking about what's going on, what kind of positions we're aiming for with white, and what sort of all the options are going to be. So like I said, this is a d4 opening, and the King's Indian, of course, comes about after knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, and then for some reason the move order I put in was d6 here. Of course, you can get here via bishop g7, e4, or d6, e4, which is what I put in. Now, of course, d5 here is the Grunfeld. I'm not talking about the Grunfeld, I'm talking about the King's Indian. Okay, so d6, e4, bishop g7, bishop e2 is the line that I am going to recommend. So already, we've made sort of a big decision. Now, like I said, this is a broad opening. There are a ton of different things you can do, including f3, the same-ish. You can play h3. I think this is the Makaganov. You can play f4 here. You can play bishop d3, knight g e2, bishop g5. There are a ton of things that you can do against the King's Indian. I am recommending, I guess, the orthodox, the classical way of playing, which is to go with bishop e2 and knight f3. Here, black castles. We're going to go knight f3. And now already we have a big decision point for black. I have the little database open here on my screen, which you can just barely see, I think, in the live audience. And it's saying e5, of course, is by far the main move. This is the main line of the King's Indian. We're going to be talking about some positions after e5 today. But black does have a variety of sidelines that I want to get to in due time. Those include this move knight a6, knight b d7, bishop g4, c5, c6, even knight c6 here, and queen e8 are all going to get their moment in the sun. I even went so far as to say I'm going to talk about this move a5 as well. And a lot of these side moves are going to have similar ideas, and you'll get into similar positions, but they do have some independent value. So we'll talk about them eventually. For now, though, I want to mention e5. Our plan is going to be to castle against this move. So far, so normal, right? We put all of our pieces on very reasonable squares. Black fianchettoed, played knight f6 and castled kingside, and now is finally fighting back in the center with this move e5. Common question I get asked by beginners, is this pawn hanging? The answer is, as always, kind of, right? So it looks like there's just too many attackers here. You can take d8, take e5. But what's going to happen here is knight takes e4, when now you see the point of the tactic is sort of being revealed. So you can't just win a pawn against e5, which is why we're going to castle. Black gets the piece back, and black, I think, is probably better in this position. Okay, so we castle instead. Now, today, we're going to be focusing on the main move, which is knight c6. But again, both on moves 6 and 7, you're going to have a lot of transpositions here. But again, these moves like knight a6, knight d7, c6, and now even a few extra options like knight h5 and bishop g4 are going to become very, very relevant. And we'll talk about those in due time. But today, as I said, we're focusing on knight c6. Now we're going to play d5 against this. And this is sort of the iconic classical King's Indian position. After d5, knight e7, this is where players have been battling for at least the past 50 years over what is going on in this position. I think this is probably the most testing variation against the King's Indian defense, but it's also very testing for white. So who here is familiar with this position and the plans that are involved? Anybody? This is totally new. Okay, that's okay. And then, Brian, you said you've seen this before, right?
I think I've seen, yeah, I mean, other people play this before.
Yeah.
Not personally. It's basically white will play the queen side, black will try to checkmate on the queen side.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's this old adage in chess that says you should play where your pawns point. Now, what does that mean? Really, it's saying you should play on the side where you have more space. Of course, space is a good thing to have in chess. It gives your pieces more room to maneuver. And when you have more space, that's the side of the board you want to play on. Because if your pieces have more room to maneuver, then you can outmaneuver your opponent, you can target their weaknesses better, and you can win on the side of the board where you have more space. And so by playing on the side of the board where your pawns point, in this case, of course, black's pawns point towards the king's side. So as Brian said, black is going to be playing on the king's side, going to try to be expanding on the king's side of the board, getting more space and playing for checkmate. Meanwhile, it's a little bit less clear which side of the board white's pawns point to. But since we are ready to expand further with these types of moves on the queen side, then the queen side is where white has more space. And that's the side of the board where white is going to try to win. So to that effect, these are going to be the main ideas we focus on in the lecture tonight. We're not going to get through all of the relevant variations here because there's too much for one lecture, but we'll definitely get started on it. So in this position, I am recommending the old main move that they've been doing for years and years and years, which is knight to e1. Now, fans of Vladimir Kramnik might be familiar with his move b4, which is the bayonet attack. And this is a very good line, but I think knight e1 is the best move. That's my big claim. So today, we're going to look at knight e1. And now, the last big decision point here for black, after knight e1, knight to d7 these days is considered the main move. It's considered the best move for black. But today, I want to focus on the secondary move, knight to e8. But I want to tell you why I want to focus on it here. So against knight to d7, I'll show you some spoilers. I'm going to be recommending bishop e3. And now, why is black always moving this knight? How does that make any sense? Does anybody anticipate black's idea here, based on what I've said?
F5.
Yeah, f5. Black wants to expand on the side of the board where he has more space, take even more space, and eventually try to checkmate us. So after f5, the point of knight e1 is also revealed. We want to shore up our center with f3. Now black's going to go f4, bishop f2. And the main line is going to come with g5. And like I said, black is coming for us over here. And just to reveal my point, the line I'm recommending is c5 in this position. Now black's only serious move is knight takes c5. And then we can go b4. And we get into some very complex variations there. What's the idea of all of this? Well, the idea is you cannot play knight to d7. Because after knight to b5, I'm targeting your c7 pawn. So keep that in mind. The main move I'm recommending against the main line is revolving around this idea of targeting c7. So that's why I actually want to start with this move, knight to e8. It's a lot like knight to d7, but now, as you'll notice, one of the big points of knight e8 is black is preemptively cutting us off here by defending this c7 pawn. The knight on d7, of course, not going to defend c7. The knight on e8 defends c7. So we are going to have to go for sort of the more classical ideas against black's play. So that's why I want to start with this. This is going to be sort of the King's Indian at its purest. Black is coming for us on the king's side. We are coming for black on the queen's side. And we're going to see who wins the race. I have good news for you guys. It's us. So I want to start with what happens if black sort of plays this knight e8 idea, which we'll get to that position right away, and then plays as if he had actually played knight to d7. Just sort of pretends it's business as usual, and tries to come after us. So we know black's idea. Black is doing this and this and this and coming after us. So what do you think white should be playing for in the meantime? What is white's idea going to be? We know it's on the queen side, but how do we actually get some active play?
Pawn storm?
Yeah, we want to do a pawn storm. We absolutely do want to do a pawn storm. So what is the key pawn break going to be? And in this case, what do I mean by a pawn break? That means when you put your pawns in tension with your opponent's pawns, where they can capture each other and break open the position.
B or C file?
Yeah, either the B or C file. I'm looking at this move C5. C5 is going to be our key move here. Now, why is C5 the key move? That's what puts the pawns in tension. That's going to introduce our main ideas, either capturing on D6, opening up the C file, and allowing us to more effectively bring our pieces in. It's also going to introduce ideas of potentially one day pushing this pawn to C6 and targeting these other pawns on the queen side. So C5, the C pawn, is what it's all about. And with that in mind, there are a few common ways for white to get developed here. One is bishop E3, one is knight D3. You'll notice that both of these moves help defend the C5 square. There's also a clever idea with F3 that I'm actually not going to recommend because I don't think it's very good, but I like this move bishop E3. Brings our piece into the game, helps it target the queen side where we want to be playing, and furthermore it helps defend the C5 square for the C5 break. Now black is going to push with F5. It's really the only sensible move here, and we are going to play F3. Now there are a couple important ideas that I want to talk about at a later date, including C5 and king H8, where black tries to be clever and leave this pawn on F5 to target our center a little bit more. But for today, we're focusing on the main plan, which is F4. Now, thanks to F3, we can tuck our bishop back on F2. And black is going to continue out now with either G5 or H5. Now, these moves actually don't have any independent value. Whenever black plays H5, pretty much 100% of the time, we play the same move, which is going to be C5. 100% of the time, black is going to follow up with G5. So no independent value there. So we'll focus on G5, which is the more flexible option. Now, like I said, I'm recommending this move C5. This is going to be the key focus of the lecture today. All the moves up until this point have been more or less pretty linear, right? Black wants to go F5, F4, G5. White wants to develop the pieces. We need to go F3 to shore up our center. And so it's very, very linear, right? The players don't deviate too much. These are the plans. But from here, black is going to have a few different options, and we're going to see that there's sort of something wrong with all of them. So what do I want to look at? So I want to look at ways for black to achieve the G4 push. That's what it's all going to be about for black. For us, it was C5. By virtue of having the white pieces, we got our break in first. For black, it's going to be achieving G4. Of course, black's not going to do it right away. We would actually capture this pawn for free. So black needs to prepare this move. And we're going to see that there's a few different ways black can go about doing that. So I think potentially the best way for black to play is to go rook f6 to g6, h5, and try to play g4 like this. Why do I think this is the best way? Well, it's the fastest way for black to achieve this break, and it's keeping in line with the ideas of knight to e8. By playing knight e8, black opens up this avenue for the rook and allows himself this fast way to go for g4. Now to start with, I want to look at what happens if black takes the more normal approach, sort of the knight d7 approach, which is to play knight g6 and take just a few more turns to go for g4. You get this sort of more solid setup with black, you get more pieces involved, but you're not threatening g4 quite as quickly. So I want to start with this. Against this knight g6 idea, black is taking so long to play this move g4 that we are actually going to have a way to win outright on the queen side before black can even think about playing this move. So before I reveal the idea, I want to ask you guys just to take a second here and think about our options in this position. White has tried a lot of different moves here. And before I show what I think is the best line, I think it's worthwhile to look at the different ideas and understand why some are correct and some aren't. So to get you started, of course, we're looking at the queen side of the board. We're looking at ways to open up files over here, ways to target black's queen side pawns. So let's see if you guys can come up with just a couple ideas for what white wants to do over here on the queen side. What should we be aiming for? So anything we can do to provoke weaknesses, to get our pieces to invade on the queen side, to open up files, these are the ideas you want to look at. Yeah, so rook c1 is a key move in our main variation against knight d7. And it's a good idea here. It's not a bad move by any means, but I'm going to argue that we can do better. And the reason for that, again, is because this knight e8 move is specifically targeted at controlling the c7 square. So because our opponent has played in a way that's designed to control these squares on the c file, it's better actually in this case to go target some other squares. But yeah, rook c1 is a very important idea to the position. So it's good to understand rook c1 normally a good idea, and understand the specifics. Because of knight e8, maybe we look for something else.
C6, try to provoke an exchange with the b pawn.
Yeah, so c6 is another critical idea in the position. We would love to see pawn takes c6 when we could play pawn takes c6. And now what have we done? We've opened up this diagonal for our bishop. We've weakened the light squares in the position for black. And we've given ourselves some very good ideas. You know, even, for example, just coming down the board with our pawns, playing b6 is going to be a nice winning plan for us. However, there's something wrong with c6. What might black do if we were to play c6 right away? Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, the adage, you want to play on the side where you have more space. You also want to open things up on the side where you have more space. So if black is able to lock things down, that's going to be advantageous for black against c6. But again, c6 is an important idea. It's just that there's sort of one problem with it. So no one's mentioning maybe the most forcing move.
Just taking.
Yeah, so you could just take on d6, right? So this is definitely worth looking at, and it's always going to be a critical option for white. Now, what happens if we take and black takes back? Are there any interesting options here for white? How can we make use of all this pressure we have on the queen side? Yeah, you could start launching some pawns down the board, but there's actually a way that white can immediately provoke a weakness in the position. So as it sits, these pawns here are well positioned to keep the white pieces out, but we can force them to move and provoke some weaknesses to give our own pieces some squares. Yeah, Brian?
So if we play knight d5, then they'll probably play a6, and then that weakens the d6 square.
Yeah, knight b5 is again a critical idea in this position. Why? Because we're targeting this a pawn, and we're either going to capture this a pawn outright, which of course weakens the squares, or black is going to either move the a pawn or the b pawn. And either move is going to give us a lot of options here. But sadly, again, there is sort of a problem with our plays. So after a6, white has this really nice idea of going knight a3. And if black sort of continues business as usual, we can go knight c4 and then plant one of our pieces, either the knight or the bishop, both tend to be good, onto b6. And white is probably winning in this position. But black does have a nice resource here in the form of this move b5. And b5, it looks like it makes more weaknesses, and in fact it does, but it is actually going to slow down our play quite a bit. We no longer have this knight c4 to b6 idea, and white is sort of sad about this knight on a3. You know, it takes some time to try to do something like this, and maybe even after we get here, the knight isn't crushing on c6, right? We need to win on the queen side before black gets after us. So with all of these ideas in mind, there is sort of a way to there is the perfect improving move here for white. So let's think about it. Let's say if cd6, cd6, knight b5, a6, there's a move that helps prevent b5. There's a move that's good against this b6 idea as well. And even if knight takes here, which we'll see is an important idea, there's a move that would be useful to have in this position. And so because that move is useful literally everywhere, we should just play it right now. So does anybody know the mystical, magical move that I'm talking about that would be useful everywhere? It helps prevent b5, it helps play against b6, it even helps us against this move knight takes d6.
I'm guessing there's a queen b3?
Yeah, so queen b3 is always going to be double-edged. The reason being your queen is useful to help stop g4, and so we might want to leave our queen on d1 for as long as we can, because if we're stopping g4, then that gives us more time on the queen side to do what we want to do. Some other move.
Knight d3.
Yeah, so knight d3 is not a bad move here, but it's sort of not, again, not stopping moves like b5, right? a4 is the best move in this position, and it's the move that I'm going to recommend. So how does a4 help us everywhere? Well, let's take a look. Let's just play a move for black. We'll play h5 again. Let's say we go down these same lines, right? cd6, knight b5. Now, if b6, really easy to see how a4 helps us. We're immediately going to play this move a5, open up this a file, and bam, we crash through on the queen's side. We won the race. Black didn't get off the ground on the king's side. We're already forcing black to play where we are going to be the strongest. If a6, now again, this knight a3 idea is going to be very, very strong. We come to c4, and you cannot play b5 to stop us. And lastly, if knight takes d6, we'll see that knight to b5 is going to be a very strong move in this case. Knight to b5. And how does the a pawn help us? Well, of course, if takes, we're going to take back with the pawn. And again, bam, we have cracked open the a file. And so a4 is such a great move that you want to play it right away, because it helps us everywhere. It's always going to be a useful move. And we'll see in this case that we might even have a better idea than taking on d6. That's how strong this a4 move is. So with a4, I'm going to take a look at the main move, which is rook f7. So h5 is more or less the same. You can play pretty much the same way against it, because in the long term, you can throw in h5 at any point, but black is playing for this sort of plan, either bishop f8 or bishop f6, moving the bishop, playing rook g7. So now, again, we could very much go for these c takes d6 plans, and these plans, I think, are going to be a bit better for white, but I think white has an even better way of playing here, which is a5. So keep these plans in mind. They're going to be really important a little bit later on, but in this case, we're going for an even stronger plan in the form of c6. So we remember this c6 idea from when we were brainstorming earlier, and like I promised, it's a relevant idea. We just wanted to put our pawn on a5 first, so that black doesn't have that option of pushing past us. Now, of course, we are immediately going to be able to capture, and black is dead lost if you play b6. You cannot take with the a pawn, and you don't really want to take with the b pawn either. Let me just ask the computer really quick, how do we prove it? Yeah, queen b3 is +3. b4 is also +3. Everything is just totally winning. I think we can even think about taking on b6 soon. I guess not yet, but knight b5. Okay, computer's suggesting nonsense. Let's say black plays a human move. Yeah, again, this is a big idea for us. So c takes b, definitely not going to be an option, which means b6 is not an option, which means black does have to sort of go for these unfortunate ideas of taking on c6 or just sort of ignoring the situation on the queen side. So again, how did we get here? We started in this knight e8 line. We followed this linear path. g5 is the most flexible, c5, and now we're looking at this knight g6 move. By playing knight to g6, black has sort of already sealed his fate. He's going to be too slow with g4, so we can go a4, a5, and c6 against pretty much whatever black is going to be doing. At any moment, of course, though, we're looking for ways to open up the position on the queen side. So let's look at b takes c6 first. This is the only thing that's been tried in practice. There's a game between a couple random 2200s here. So it's going to go b c6, d takes c6, of course. Now black is still going for this plan of g4. And white played very simply here and actually very well. With b4, black tried to develop with bishop e6 going for d5. And then this game pretty much immediately ended after g4 takes knight f6, h3, shoring up the position. Again, black is just way too slow with things like h5. We just immediately are winning heavy material on the queen side. So black tried this as a sacrifice, but it's just not good enough. d5, ed5, and eventually bishop b7. And this game is just over. We can play through the rest really quickly. White took on a8 and gave some material back. It didn't matter. Black actually already resigns in this position. That's just how bad it is for black. Okay, so that's bc6. So how did white win this game? We just go b4 and play over here on the queen's side. Black played bishop e6, allowing this bishop in with bishop b7. If black doesn't do that, how do we want to win? This is the point where I haven't totally prepared this. I imagine we can just go bishop c4 check, queen b3 check, and b5, b6 is going to be very strong. Let's check really quickly just to make sure I'm not lying to you guys. Okay, knight d5 is strong, b5 is strong. I imagine queen b3 is also very strong. Yeah, white is doing very well everywhere. I think b5 is the easiest to understand, so let's point this one out. Okay, knight d5, yeah, knight f6, and b6. So like I said, we got this pawn on c6, and now we're just pushing through on the queen side, looking for ways to open things up, and it's like plus 2, plus 1.5 to plus 2. Very good. Okay, now the computer says knight f6 is the best move, so we'll take a quick look at this. Apparently this position has been reached, but not by this move order. And here I'm going to recommend this move queen b3 now because it actually makes a very distinct threat. And after queen b3, we're going to have very similar positions where black is now forced to take on c6. And in this case, the only try for counterplay is with d5. We've already stopped bishop e6. We're threatening bishop c4. So d5, and now we just take. And here you can take with the queen, take with the pawn. Everything is totally winning. Just plus two everywhere. Okay, so that is the plan against knight g6 here. So once again, to summarize, we go a4, a5. We followed up with c6. And then depending on what black does, we find some way to crack things open on the queen side, and we basically just win. So questions from here, or questions about the general ideas before I move on to the next plan? Is this kind of making sense, what we're going for? All right, I love it. Okay, so what if black is smarter than that? What if black, instead of playing knight g6, going for slower plans, tries to immediately come get us with rook f6 to g6, h5, and g4? That is the next question. So let's talk about it. So once again, we get here from knight e8, bishop e3, f5, f3, f4, bishop f2, and c5 after g5. And now, again, we are looking at what I think the best way of playing is, which is with rook f6 and h5. You can kind of transpose these moves. Doesn't matter so much. So once again, remembering all of our various ideas, what's the superstar move that is useful everywhere? A4. Always A4. So we play it again here. No reason not to. Now black goes rook f6. Now quickly, let's take a look at what happens if we try the same idea. We go a5, rook g6, and now we try c6. Well, in this case, black has left this knight on e7, and this idea is not going to work in time. Not only that, but let's say we play like b4 or something. Black very much is playing this move g4 right away as fast as he can, and he's breaking through on the king side now. And we have ourselves a fight, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for winning, not a fight. So this a5, c6 idea is not going to do it for us anymore. So what were the other ideas that we talked about? What move did those sort of focus around? How are we provoking all these weaknesses?
Knight b5.
Yeah, this knight b5 idea, which maybe you can play it immediately, but I'm not going to recommend that. I think it's good to just capture here right away. So we're going to take on d6, the idea being we're opening up this bishop along this diagonal. And now there are two big moves for black. I'm going to look at c takes d6 first, and then we'll flip on over to another chapter for knight takes d6. So c takes d6. This move seems pretty natural. Black leaves this knight in a nice defensive position, guarding against c7 in the d6 square, and potentially allowing it to jump back to the king side. Excuse me, sorry. And then black again is planning to follow up rook g6, g4. Get g4 in as fast as possible. Now, what was the follow-up move? I think you already shouted it out.
Knight b5.
Knight b5, that's what we're going for here. So knight b5. Now, black again has three options, basically. You can go a6 to save your a pawn, forcing your knight back. You can go b6 to save your a pawn, or you can ignore us and let us take your a pawn. Sort of the three options. So we're going to look at those three various options. In practice, I think we've only gotten here a few times, and black has tried to save the pawn in all three cases. So let's take a look at a6 first. I think this is the most natural. So a6. Now, of course, which square do we want to go back to? a3 or c3? Yeah, definitely a3, because again, we're heading for c4, going into the b6 square. So what's black's plan here?
b5.
So he would have liked to play b5, but we have actually prevented that with our useful move a4. He can't stop us from getting to c4. If we play b5, we just take it. And again, our goal is just to open up files, open things up over here, and then we basically just win. So b5, not going to be playable.
Rook g6, g4.
Yeah, that's right. Again, he's going for g4. We know what his plan is. So he goes rook g6. Again, g4 here is a pawn sacrifice and not going to be good. That's why black is doing this rook f6, g6 thing. So rook g6. Now what's our plan? We want to invade on our newly made weaknesses. So how do we do that? Knight c4. All of our moves are very, very logical. You understand each of them have this purpose of advancing our plan on the queen side. So knight c4, and then I did put two moves in here. Really, the only relevant thing is going to be g4. I took a quick look at what happens if black just passes, but you basically do the same thing. So bam, g4, black is coming after us. Now, the good news is there are a couple ways to win here. This position has been reached once in practice, again, between a random 2200 and a 2400. And I actually like the way that white played in the game. He didn't go on to win the game, but he got a very much winning advantage. So we could go knight b6, and this move is very, very good. I would even say this move is basically winning, but I like this move bishop b6 instead. So why bishop b6? Well, our bishop might turn out to be a liability on the f2 square. Black is hoping to play g3, targeting the bishop and the pawn, and maybe we're not so happy with black getting that move with tempo. So bishop b6 is really nice to get the bishop out of dodge. Queen to d7 is the only safe square for the queen. And then the clever, clever idea is to now secure our bishop on a5. Now that we've put this queen onto d7, bam, knight b6 is a massive threat, forking the queen and rook. So once again, we're here, we have our weakness, we looked for a way to invade, we found knight a3 to c4, and then we sneak our bishop away, tuck him on a5, and we're threatening this right away. If black goes like g3 or something, we can and will go knight b6, capturing one of these pieces. We're not so scared of takes. We're not going to take that pawn back, though. We're going to use it as a shield, and white is just winning. So black should defend the rook, goes rook b8. We're going to go knight b6 anyways, now queen to d8. And at this point, just to show you some example moves, we just bring our rook to the c file. Black comes out with bishop to d7. And now there are a ton of different ways to play here. In the game, white played king to h1, trying to sort of prepare for black on the queen side, or king side. I think that queen b3 is just the simplest way to play. Let's say g takes f3. We can take on d7, take on f3, and now, just for example, even the a6 pawn is falling. Black is losing pretty much everywhere in this position. Just losing. Let's check what the computer thinks. +2, and it wants to go b5, which is sort of ridiculous. We can actually just take this, go bishop b4, go king h1, really whatever we want to do, and it's +2 pretty much everywhere. You can play pretty much anything here. You have a winning position. Just don't hang checkmate. How are we going to secure our king? We'll go rook g1 and h3, and our king is going to be safe. Now it's already +3. Okay, so questions there. Questions here about why white is winning, how white is winning, how we got here. Anything for me? Okay, good. So once again, to recap, how do we get here? Black went for the more, the faster idea of rook f6 to g6 with h5, going for the quick g4. This successfully prevents our plan of a5 c6. This knight here is still defending the pawn, and black is much faster. So we go to the other plans. We go to takes on d6 with knight b5. Once again, now if a6, we're coming knight a3 to c4. We're going bishop b6, invading on the queen side, and we did it. We win, we open things up, and black is not getting anywhere on the king side in time. So that was a6. Now let's take a look at b6. Now hopefully you guys can anticipate the way we want to play here. How can we open things up after b6, trying to stunt our bishop? Yep, exactly. We go a5. We want to open the file, open the diagonal, and get after our opponent. And it's already real bad for black. If bishop d7, well, first of all, if takes, we are going to take on a7, and this is very good. If bishop d7, which is a better try, we are just going to take on b6, take on a8, and play queen b3. And again, once our opponent's pieces start sort of coming to this side of the board, it's going to go our way. Just some example moves. We can come this way. We can bring the rook in. We can take this pawn on b6. It's just losing for black. We win the fight. We win the race. We're playing on the queen side where our position is strongest. So that's b6, not the most testing move. Now, last but not least, what happens if black ignores this, right? Doesn't go a6, doesn't go b6, says, whatever, you can have my a pawn. I don't care about the a pawn. I care about checkmating you. So how do we, make weaknesses here if black doesn't defend the pawn? Oh, and there's a good question in the chat as well. Yeah, you just simply take the pawn. That's exactly right. You take the pawn. Black is going to try to save this light squared bishop because it's a very important piece to attacking on the king side. Let's say bishop d7, and then we can actually insist on getting rid of this bishop with bishop b5. And we're now actually following a game. The game went g4, bishop d7, queen d7, and now king h1. And in the game, he played h4, which was very, very bad because we can just take on g4. I thought g3 was a better try, but now we're just going to play bishop to b6, and after knight c8 we can take, and we are actually going to play h3. Just completely locking down the king side, making sure our king is safe forever, and then winning the game. Now this h3 idea is actually why this light squared bishop is so, so important in the King's Indian, because against h3, it's really important for black to be able to play bishop takes h3 to sort of get the last defenses around the white king open. Without this bishop takes h3 idea, black is pretty much helpless against our setup. It's nearly impossible to actually get to the white king in this position. It's going to take you like 8 tempi to try to organize this, and in the meantime, white is going to win on the queen side. And that's just about it. So the key thing to remember if they ignore you is to snag this bishop with bishop b5. And then, yeah, this king h1 move is good. It's actually not forced by any means. Like bishop b6 is also fine here. Really, anything is fine here. And then remembering this nice idea of going h3 to lock things down. Okay, so that is the quote-unquote better idea for black of going rook f6 to g6 with h5, right? Rather than going a5 c6 like we do against knight to g6. In this case, we're going to take on d6, go knight b5, we provoke irreparable weaknesses in black's camp, and then we use those weaknesses to win. So once again, a6 is the main move. We go knight a3, heading for c4. Then we go bishop b6, and with knight b6, we get our winning advantage. Again, eventually we're looking to take this bishop and have these nice ideas of h3 to sort of secure the win. And I was looking at, again, this move queen b3. Now, again, why is black not going with g3 here? Well, we are actually thinking about taking this bishop and going h3 again. It's the same idea that I was talking about before. With that bishop dead, we can lock things down on the king side. That's why I put the move in gf3. And again, we're going to take off this bishop and this pawn. And again, we're winning on the queen side. Just winning on the queen side here. If black ever plays this move h4, by the way, again, important to play. Well, hold on, we can't play h3. Okay, h4 is hanging in this position. But why is king h1 getting played all the time? Well, it's to meet this idea of h4, if you ever can play it, with h3. So we're not pinned, and we can, again, lock things down on the king's side now that the light squared bishop is dead. However, in this position, probably not a good idea to play h3, because black can take it, but probably a good idea just to capture the free pawn. Okay, so there you have it. That is pretty much everything you need to know about knight e8, where black is recapturing on d6 with the pawn. However, there is, of course, another idea that I have yet to mention, which is what happens when black takes back with the knight. So this move, on a surface level, looks sort of anti-positional, right? Because it's leaving this e5 pawn sort of undefended. It's breaking up black's huge pawn chain over here on the king's side. But it comes with the benefit of activating this piece a little bit. Right, this piece is going to be a little bit active. It's not going to be purely defensive on e8s. And it's also going to open up some extra avenues for black's queen, for example, to come into the game. And it's going to defend some other squares on the queen side from this d6 square. Now, let me switch chapters here so I have all my moves. So here we are, rook f6 and h5, and then knight takes d6 rather than c takes d6. So in this position, a lot of the top players in the database are playing this move knight to b5, which is a really, really good idea. We saw this idea before. It worked really well for us, so it makes sense that we're thinking about playing it here as well. And I think this move is very, very strong, except for one nice defensive idea for black. So in the database, pretty much everybody is going a6 here, which I think is a very bad move. Knight takes d6 is going to be strong. And after c takes d6, black is going to have a lot of the same problems that we were looking at before, right? This b6 square is sort of irreparably weak. We're going to try to invade, a5, for example, with bishop b6 ideas, and then invade on the c file. Looks very, very good for us. But there was a single game that followed the computer's top choice, which was c6 here. And it turns out this idea is very, very difficult to deal with the white pieces. So if you take on a7, this is what happened in the game in the database, black is actually going to take on d5, and things again get very, very messy, very complicated, right? Black is now pushing in the center. Things are opening up in the center. Things are getting less clear. And if you try this move d takes c6, well, black's knight is very well positioned to capture back and actually defend against our threat on the pawn on a7. And again, things have started to open up a little bit. We haven't provoked those key weaknesses that we were relying on, and I think black is doing okay. So because of this move c6, I think knight b5 is simply wrong. So much like in the position where we were thinking about taking on d6, but we had this super move of a4, in this position we have a move that is going to be very, very useful to us in all the variations. And in this case, that move is knight to d3. Why is knight to d3 so good? Well, we saw that knight b5 is a nice move aside from this idea of c6. And after knight to d3, we are threatening to capture on e5, and both of black's methods of defending this pawn make c6 a bad idea against knight b5. So knight d3 is so strong because we do want to go knight b5, but it just strengthens our position before we do so. So the easiest to understand here is what happens if black plays knight to g6, knight to b5, and then c6. So what's wrong with this picture now? Oh, well, okay. I highlighted it with an arrow, sorry. So what's wrong with this picture now? Well, the knight on e7 is missing, which means we can now take on c6. There is no knight takes c6 back defending all the squares. Instead, you go b c6, and bam, we're just immediately winning the game. I think this is like +3 already. Very, very tough position for black. If you try to go bishop d7, I believe we just go knight b4, and you are not going to be able to keep everything together in this position. Very, very tough. So you don't go c6 here anymore. Now I think black's best plan is to go a6, and what are we going to do here? We have a lot of options. I think knight a7 also wins, which is why I wanted to check, but no, I think knight takes d6 is the best. And again, after c takes d6, we're going to go with those classic plans of invading here on the queen's side. The computer gave a5 tentatively. I remember looking at this move queen b3 as well, which everything here is going to make a lot of sense. Let's say a5, following the game, queen f8. Again, we go bishop b6, we invade on the c file, and black is going to be too slow with the play on the king side. So that's knight g6. I think the better attempt here is rook to g6, trying to go with g4. Again, our response is knight to b5 when black is not going to be left with any good options. If you try c6 again, it's a little bit less obvious how c6 has been made worse. Now, if you take again, black has this very reasonable plan of knight takes c6. But in this case, we are actually able to win material by force with knight takes d6, something takes d6, and now after bishop c5, we're hitting this knight on e7. The queen moves, and then believe it or not, this knight is actually trapped. We go d6. Your knight cannot legally move without hanging itself. So we just win material by force here, rook d6, take, take, take. And white, of course, is winning up in exchange. So rook g6, it turns out, also prevents black's best idea of going c6. So what does that mean? That means, again, a6 is probably black's best option. We take on d6, pawn d6, and yeah, here I was looking at queen to b3 as well. Now after g4, there's quite a few games in the database here. They all go queen b6, and white again invades down the c file, and in the game I imported, this position actually was reached between famous chess second Peter Heine Nielsen, Magnus Carlsen's main guy, basically, main openings guy, against someone named Boris Kantsler, who was 2500 back in 2001. And Peter played knight f2, which was a bad move, but bishop, or just takes on g4 here, is pretty much entirely winning. Again, what are the ideas? The ideas are to lock things down on the queen side. Go h3, or on the king side. If f3 gets played, you go knight g4, and white is, again, totally winning. Queen b7, rook c7. Looks pretty convincing. Pretty convincing. And yeah, that's basically it. We invade on this b6 weakness, like in all the lines previous. We bring our rooks to the c file and try to invade, and then this is what happens if black tries to attack us. Queen g5 was a better move, just to show you. We do go with rook c7, and one more critical idea. This knight g4 idea is going to show up everywhere, just sort of locking things down. For example, takes, h3, you would take, and you are defending, and it's like plus a million. Yeah, plus 3. Plus 3, pretty good. Okay. So how did we get here? One more time. We go knight d3 against knight takes d6. We looked at knight g6 and rook g6 against both. We're going knight b5. Now c6 loses to knight takes d6, and a6 is no good, again, because of the move knight takes d6, after which we attack the b6 weakness again. I wanted to look at the one game in the database that was in this position where black played g4. Just to show you, here we go bishop h4. Pretty much always a good idea when you can pin this knight here and your bishop's still on f2. And all the ideas are going to look very similar here. Black is going to go a6. We're going to take on d6. And again, in this position, we're looking at moves like queen b3. We're looking at bringing the rook to the c file. We're looking at invading on the queen side, and black is going to have a very tough time of dealing with these queen side threats. Once again, winning opening advantage. Okay, so any questions for me here? I know we've already covered a lot, but there's a lot to cover. But the good news is white is winning everywhere, which is like awesome. Any questions? Okay, thanks for sticking with me. I know this is dense stuff. So before we move on to the last idea I want to cover, let's do a quick recap of everything we've talked about. So we're looking at the King's Indian defense. This is the starting position, playing the orthodox classical variation. And we're looking at this knight c6 idea, which is by far the main move. We're going d5, locking up the center, knight to e1, the classical orthodox variations, where we're defending our center with f3. We are attacking on the queen side. Black is attacking on the king side. Knight d7 is the main move, playing against our break of c5, but this lecture we're talking about knight e8, with the clever idea of defending c7 and allowing the rook to have this extra path to attack on the king side. This is followed by bishop e3, f5, f3, f4, bishop f2, g5. Here we're looking at c5, and now we talked about how knight g6 loses to a4, a5 with c6, because you don't get g4 in time. So black should go much faster with h5. Now we go a4, rook f6. Again, black needs to play quickly for g4. Now we're taking on d6. Against c takes d6, we win by provoking a weakness with knight b5 and heading back to attack the b6 square. After knight to d6, we can actually force very similar positions by first playing knight d3 and following up with knight b5, when our plans are going to be largely the same. We attack the b6 weakness, we invade on the queen side, and white has a winning advantage. So we've been talking for a long time, but that is what it boils down to. So you don't need to remember all the specifics that I showed. A lot of that was just example variations of what of how exactly white should invade on the queen side, how exactly to win. But if you remember those core concepts, you're going to do okay. You want to go knight b5, provoke these weaknesses, and against knight d6, it is really important to remember this knight to d3 idea, followed by knight to b5, when again, white is doing very well. So with that in mind, let's look at one last idea before we call it quits tonight, which we're going to just touch on this briefly, which is, of course, sort of the elephant in the room, perhaps, which is what happens if black takes your pawn here? So let's talk about this a little bit. This is a very rare idea. Black in practice does this very little because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You know, what is white trying to do? White's trying to open up the position on the queen side. So why should black help you open up the position by, you know, introducing this pawn capture? Wouldn't it make more sense to make white spend the tempo to take on d6 than to spend the actual tempo taking on c5? And this is kind of true. And now when I was analyzing this, basically what it boils down to is most of the time, eventually, black is still playing this knight to d6 move, and we are very much just transposing back to our c takes d6, knight takes d6 variations. So I only want to talk about this for a little bit. Bishop takes c5 is going to be the response I recommend. It is possible with white to ignore this pawn and not capture it back right away, but I think it's worthwhile to take the pawn back just for simplicity's sake. Black is, again, going to have largely the same ideas. We want to go rook f6, h5, rook g6, and come try to checkmate us over here on the king side. Now here I'm going to recommend the move a4, and the reason for that is because of move orders, because if we go c5 and black played rook f6 first, this would be the same position, right? We can play like this here, or we can get here, black would play h5, so we can get here like this, or we can get here like this, same position. See, I click back and forth, absolutely nothing changes. So I like a4 here. It's still a useful move. We still want to gain this space on the queen side and target black's queen side pawns. And then after h5, I'm actually going to recommend tucking this bishop back onto f2. The reason for that is we want to have this c5 square sort of clear for our knight to come out. And oftentimes it's going to be very beneficial for us to respond to the move g4 with the move bishop h4, which is why I like having this bishop back here on f2. In this case, g4 still hangs a pawn, so black wouldn't do it here, but just to show you sort of the idea. And sorry, I lied. I'm not recommending bishop f2. My moves got messed up. I'm recommending knight to d3 with the idea of going bishop to f2. So just a move order thing there. I don't think it actually matters. You can go bishop f2 here, rook g6, knight d3. Should be exactly the same. But we're going to look with this move order. Now there is a very, very high-level game in this position between Boris Gelfand with white and Veselin Topalov with black, which ended in a draw. That being said, believe it or not, those players played pretty well in that game, and white had a winning advantage. So let's see how it turned out in practice first and foremost. g4 was played in the game, and again, this bishop h4 idea is going to come in handy, just pinning up the black pieces, making black's life difficult. Black in this game tried a6, preventing our ideas of knight to b5. Now we go g3. And this is a really nice idea for white to help lock things down over here on the king side. So what's the idea? Well, black plays queen to d6, and our point is to actually go with f takes g4. And now black plays bishop g4, takes, and black played rook takes g4 in the game. Now what happens if at any point h takes g4, for example? What do you think is going on here? Well, yeah, so why isn't black doing this? You know, that's the question. Oh, and yeah, I forgot to answer one of the questions in the chat, so I will get back to that before we wrap up here. So any ideas?
You play g takes f4?
Yeah, so I've asked you a question that I don't fully know the answer to, but I very much suspect that g takes f4 is just winning here, with knight takes f4 to follow. We can go bishop g3, again, securing our king side, and at the same time now, we've just strictly won a pawn in the opening. Not a bad way to play. Let's check. Yeah, plus 5 is pretty good. So that's why h takes g is not getting played, and that's why g3 is such a strong move here. We are actually threatening to just win this pawn. So in the game, rook takes g4 was played. Knight f2 was played to force this rook back, which was a good idea. And now queen takes h5, and I believe here white is just doing very, very well. Yeah, plus, only +1? Really? Only +1? Ah, yeah, so this queen h5 move was not the best. It should be closer to +2 if white finds this move, king to h1, which again, just sort of securing the king first is always a good idea. So that's more or less everything I want to say about d takes c5, right? And it's in black's best interest to sort of transpose to these knight takes d6 lines. And it's a very inhuman idea that doesn't really show up in practice too often, I would say. But if there's one thing that you want to look at more, engines do think that this d takes c5 move is worth looking at. And so I would say if you're not satisfied with the knight e8 coverage, d takes c5 is the move that I would go home and study. Now, there was one more question in the chat that I wanted to talk about, which was basically, I'm going to assume it's from this position. The question was, well, if black realizes that his attack on the king side isn't coming fast enough, wouldn't it make sense for black to try to slow down white on the queen side? And their suggestion for that was to play something like a6 or a5. So what do you guys think about this move? Let's look at a5, for example. What do you think the issue is with this line of reasoning? You know, why not do this to slow down white's attack? Hopefully you guys understand enough now to be able to answer what happens if black does something random.
They're kind of provoking their own weaknesses long term.
That's exactly right. You know, we go through all this effort just to play knight b5 to provoke a weakness, and by playing a6 or a5, black isn't really preventing our play. It's actually advancing it. Now, of course, we can take on d6, and we already have our weakness ready-made to attack. So yes, okay, our opponent surprised us. They played a5 in a position where we didn't look at it, but the ideas are going to remain the same. We want to target the b6 square. We want to invade with our pieces. And I think there are numerous ways to go about doing that in this position. I actually think I would play the move knight b1 in this position. Why knight b1? Well, I have an idea, right? Knight c4, and we've seen this story before, right? We've seen this story before. Let's ask the computer. +3. So there you go. And okay, knight to b1 it thinks is a bit much. Okay, rook h6 is a very, very strange idea. It wants to go queen b3 though, which is a very nice idea. Again, targeting the weaknesses on the queen side, and white is much, much better. Same thing I would say with the move a6. Yeah, queen b3 here, knight d3. I think c takes d6 is also totally fine, with, again, a lot of the same ideas we've looked at before. Just invading on the queen side, going for that queen side play. Okay, any final questions for me before we call it quits? Any final questions? All right, this was a pretty dense lecture. We talked about a lot, but I think this is going to introduce you to really the most important ideas in this opening for white. You now have these ideas, a4, a5 with c5, c6. You have these c takes d6 ideas, ways to provoke weaknesses in the queen side against the king's Indian. And now hopefully we understand why knight e8 is not a line we see often today at the highest level. Players have analyzed these variations. They see that white is sort of winning everywhere because white's play on the queen side is just too fast. You open up the queen side, you provoke these weaknesses, and you get a winning position. So with that in mind, look forward to next week when we will tackle at least some of the main variations with knight to d7. Why is knight d7 a better move? Well, it controls c5. Okay, so thank you all very, very much for watching. If you have more time, please stick around. International Master Dorsa Derek Shani will be teaching right after this, live on YouTube as well. As always, thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the Road to 2000. My name is Caleb Denby, and I'll see you guys next time.